"Daddy, please don't leave me. Not today, not like this." Those were the last words Sarah Bennett sobbed into her father's chest as he took his final breath in that cold hospital room. 24 hours later, she stood outside a courthouse in downtown Atlanta. Rain soaked through her black funeral dress, her 6-month pregnant belly pressed against the fabric, and through the glass doors, she watched her husband sign a marriage certificate. Not to renew their vows, to marry another woman. His name was Kim Min-ho. 3 years ago, he'd promised to love Sarah forever. Today, he was marrying Park Jae-won, his boss at the marketing firm. The same woman who'd whispered finally when Sarah's father's heart monitor went silent. Sarah clutched the envelope her father had pressed into her hands before he died. Her fingers were still dirty from placing roses on his grave that morning. "Baby girl," her father had whispered with his last breath. "When I'm gone, open this. You are never alone, you are never poor, you are never powerless. I made sure of that." But standing in the rain, watching her husband kiss another woman while her father's body was barely cold in the ground, Sarah felt like the poorest, most powerless person alive. What Min-ho didn't know, what Jae-won didn't know as she smiled in her white dress, was that Sarah's father wasn't just a janitor. The humble man who'd mopped elementary school floors for 35 years had a secret. And in exactly 3 hours, when Sarah finally opened that envelope, everything would change. If you've ever felt abandoned, betrayed, or left behind by someone you loved, stay with me. Because Sarah's story is about to show you that sometimes the people who walk away do you the biggest favor of your life. And sometimes the ones we underestimate are the ones with the most power. The hospital room had smelled like antiseptic and grief. Sarah had been holding her father's hand for 16 straight hours. James Bennett lay beneath white sheets that made his brown skin look gray. The cancer had come fast. Pancreatic, stage 4, 3 months from diagnosis to this moment. Her phone buzzed, a text from Min-ho. "Still at work, big presentation tomorrow, staying at Dave's place tonight, don't wait up." Sarah stared at the words. Her father was dying, right now, and Min-ho was worried about a sales presentation. She turned the phone face down and squeezed her father's hand tighter. His eyes opened, still clear, still her daddy's eyes. "Maya," he whispered. "I'm here, Daddy. I'm right here. Need to tell you something. Important. Save your strength. We can talk later." "No, baby." His grip tightened. "No more time. Listen carefully." Sarah leaned closer. "In my apartment, bedroom closet, old Nike shoebox on the top shelf. There's a false bottom. Inside, you'll find a key." "A key to what?" "Safety deposit box. First National Bank. Box number 1247. He coughed, his whole body shaking. "Everything you need is there. Everything I should have told you years ago." "Daddy, I don't understand." "You will." His eyes locked on hers. "Promise me something. Promise you'll go to that bank. Promise you won't tell anyone until you know everything." "I promise." "Not Min-ho." His voice gained sudden strength. "Especially not Min-ho." Sarah's breath caught. Why?" "Because I see how he looks at you now, like you're a burden instead of a blessing." His breathing grew shallow. 3 weeks ago, I changed my will, added protection for you, for my grandbaby." "Daddy, what are you talking about?" But the machines were changing their rhythm. The beeps spread further apart. A nurse rushed in, checked the monitors, and her face went soft. "Mr. Bennett," she said gently, "do you want us to?" "No," James whispered. "No machines, just my daughter." The nurse nodded and quietly left. James looked at Sarah. Despite everything, he smiled. "You know what the best day of my life was?" Sarah shook her head, unable to speak. "The day your mama put you in my arms. You were so tiny, so perfect. I looked at you and thought this is what I was born for. Not money, not power, just loving you." "Mama," Sarah's voice broke. Her mother had died giving birth to her. She was beautiful, kind, everything pure in this world. His eyes grew distant. My family hated her, said she wasn't good enough, not the right class. They gave me a choice, her or the inheritance. What inheritance? I chose her, baby. Every time I chose love. And when she died bringing you into this world, I chose you. I walked away from billions to raise you right. Sarah's head spun. Billions, Daddy, what? My real name is James Hartwell III. Each word was harder for him now. Hartwell Industrial Holdings, my grandfather's empire, I was supposed to take over. But I met your mama and I knew she was my real life. So I left, changed my name, got a job mopping floors, never regretted it once. You've been rich this whole time. Not rich, baby, wealthy, and I never stopped managing it, growing it, protecting it, for you. The monitors screamed. The envelope, James gasped. In the deposit box, it explains everything, the trusts, the protections. He pulled her close. Trust the plan, I know what's coming, but trust the plan. What's coming? Daddy, what do you mean? You are never alone. You are never poor. You are never powerless. I made sure of that. Daddy, no. I love you, Sarah, more than all the money in the world. You are my greatest treasure. And then he was gone. The sound of the flat line echoed in Sarah's ears like the end of everything. She collapsed onto his chest, sobbing so hard she couldn't breathe. The smell of him, Irish spring soap and coffee and love. She tried to memorize it before it faded forever. Her phone buzzed again. Minho. Hey babe, Dave's girlfriend is here too. We're all grabbing drinks. Probably be a late night. You good? Sarah stared at the text through her tears. Her father's words echoed in her mind. I see how he looks at you, like you're a burden. She finally saw it too. The rain felt like the sky was grieving. Sarah stood at the edge of her father's grave at Evergreen Cemetery. Her black dress was soaked through. Her hand rested on her swollen belly. The preacher's words blurred into meaningless sound. All she could hear was the voice in her head screaming that this couldn't be real. The mahogany casket sank into the ground. The yellow roses she'd placed on top were already wilting. Petals washed away into mud. Maybe 30 people came. Former coworkers from the elementary school, a few neighbors, distant cousins who showed up out of obligation. Her father had lived quietly, loved deeply, and left a hole in the world too big for Sarah to survive. Minho stood beside her, but he might as well have been on another planet. He held an umbrella over his own head, not hers. He checked his phone every few minutes. His jaw was tight with impatience. When the preacher said ashes to ashes, dust to dust, Minho sighed loud enough for Sarah to hear. She looked at him then, really looked, and saw a stranger. This man had promised to love her in sickness and health. Now he couldn't even pretend to care that she'd just lost everything. After the service, as people offered condolences Sarah wouldn't remember, Minho leaned close. I need to head out, client meeting. It's been scheduled for months. Sarah turned to him slowly. A client meeting? Minho, we just buried my father. I know, and I'm sorry, but this deal is important. You've got people here, you'll be fine. He kissed her forehead quickly, like patting a dog. I'll see you at home later. He walked away through the rain, pulling out his phone before he'd even reached his car. Sarah watched him go. Something broke inside her that she didn't have words for yet. An elderly woman approached, Mrs. Chen from her father's school. Your daddy was the best man I ever knew, she whispered, pulling Sarah into a hug that smelled like lavender. He talked about you every single day. You were his whole world. Sarah couldn't speak. She just nodded. He told me something a few weeks ago, Mrs. Chen continued. He said, Helen, my baby girl is stronger than she knows. Soon she's going to need every bit of that strength. I didn't understand then. But Sarah, honey, whatever you're facing, you've got your daddy's blood. That means you've got steel in your spine. The old woman squeezed her hand once and walked away. Those words echoed, whatever's coming. Her father had known. Somehow he'd known. That night, Sarah sat alone in her father's apartment. The threadbare couch he'd owned for 20 years, the TV with 3 channels, the kitchen table where they'd eaten countless dinners together, where he'd helped her with homework, where he'd taught her that the best conversations happen over simple food and genuine love. She should have been packing his things. Instead, she just sat there wearing his old jacket, breathing in the fatting smell of him. Her phone rang. Minho. Hey, background noise, music, laughter. Just checking in, you okay? Where are you? Grabbed dinner with a team, had to decompress. Heavy day. Heavy day, like he'd been the one burying his father. When are you coming home? Probably late. We might hit a bar after. You should rest. You look exhausted. I look exhausted. Minho, I buried my father today. I know, that's why I'm saying you should rest. He sounded irritated. Look, I gotta go, order some food, take a bath, see you tomorrow. He hung up. Sarah sat there staring at her phone. A notification popped up. Minho's Instagram. Someone had tagged him in a photo. Her hands shook as she opened it. There he was, at some trendy restaurant, sitting in a booth, and next to him, pressed close, laughing, was a woman Sarah had never seen before. Beautiful, polished, wearing a red dress that probably cost more than Sarah's rent. The caption, celebrating new beginnings with my favorites, Minho Kim and Jae-won Park. Jae-won Park, senior marketing director at Minho's company, his boss, the woman he was always having meetings with. Sarah clicked on Jae-won's profile. It was public, full of photos, expensive restaurants, luxury vacations, designer clothes, success personified. 3 photos down, another one, Minho and Jae-won, his arm around her waist, her hand on his chest, both smiling like they'd won the lottery. Posted 6 weeks ago, while Sarah's father was dying. The caption, when you know, you know. Sarah's vision blurred. She scrolled further. More photos. Minho and Jae-won at a concert. At a beach. At what looked like a hotel room carefully cropped. The affair had been going on for months. While Sarah was pregnant. While her father was dying. While she was drowning in grief, Minho had been building another life with someone else. She ran to the bathroom and vomited. When she finally stopped shaking, she looked at herself in the mirror. Swollen eyes, pale face, her pregnant belly pushed against her father's oversized jacket. She looked exactly like what she was, a broken woman who'd lost everything. And in that moment, staring at her own reflection, Sarah made a decision. Tomorrow, she would go to the bank. She would open that safety deposit box. She would find out what her father meant. Because right now, she felt like the most powerless person on earth. Her phone buzzed. Minho again. BTW, we need to talk when I get home. Something important. Those words never mean anything good. Sarah knew what was coming. She could feel it in her bones. But what she didn't know, what she couldn't possibly imagine, was that in exactly 18 hours, her entire world would flip upside down in ways she never dreamed possible. The next morning came too fast and too slow. Sarah hadn't slept. She'd spent the night on her father's couch, clutching his jacket, waiting for Minho to come home. He never did. At 6 a.m., her phone buzzed. Crashed at Dave's. Coming by at 9. We need to talk. Important. Sarah's hands went to her belly. Her baby girl kicked hard. It's okay, sweet girl, she whispered. We're going to be okay. Your grandpa promised. At 8:30, Sarah forced herself to shower, to put on clean clothes, the same black dress from the funeral. Everything else felt wrong. She made coffee she wouldn't drink, sat at the kitchen table, waited. Minho arrived at 9:15, on purpose, a power play. He looked good, rested, like he hadn't just attended his father-in-law's funeral. He was wearing cologne, expensive, he'd never worn it around her. Hey, he didn't quite meet her eyes. How you feeling? How do you think I'm feeling?" He sat down across from her. That's when she saw it, the folder in his hand, manila official looking. Her heart hammered. "Look, there's no easy way to say this." He slid the folder across the table. "I want a divorce." The words hit her like a physical blow, even though she'd known, even though she'd seen it coming. "What?" "I'm not happy, Sarah. I haven't been for a long time. We've grown apart. You've been so focused on your dad, and I need something different. My dad just died yesterday. I know the timing isn't ideal." "Isn't ideal?" She laughed, a broken sound. "I'm 6 months pregnant. My father died yesterday, and the timing isn't ideal. Prolonging this doesn't help anyone." He was using his sales voice now. "I've already talked to a lawyer. It can be simple. Clean, you keep the apartment. I'll pay child support. We both move on." "Move on to what? To who?" Sarah pulled out her phone, opened Instagram, shoved it across the table. "To her." Minho's face went blank. "How long?" Sarah's voice rose. "How long have you been sleeping with your boss while I was watching my father die?" "It's not like that." "Then what is it like? Tell me." "Don't make this ugly." His jaw tightened. "I didn't plan this. Jaiwan and we connect. She's successful, ambitious, going places. She understands the life I want." Every word was a knife. "And what am I?" "You were my wife," past tense. "You're a good person, Sarah, but you were never going to be enough. Not for the life I want to build." The cruelty of it stole her breath. "I'm pregnant with your child." "I know. I'll support the baby financially. I'm not a monster. But I can't stay in a marriage that makes me miserable just because of biology." He stood up, buttoned his jacket. "Sign the papers. My lawyer will be in touch. I'll get my stuff this weekend." "Minho, please." She hated the begging in her voice. Hated that even now, some part of her wanted him to stay. He looked at her then, really looked, and what she saw in his eyes was worse than anger. Pity. "You'll be okay, Sarah. You're strong. You'll figure it out." And then he left. Just walked out. Left her sitting there, 6 months pregnant, freshly orphaned, with divorce papers on the table. Sarah sat in the silence. Her father's words echoed. "I see it in his eyes. He looks at you like you're a burden." Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. "Hi, Sarah. This is Jaiwan. I know this must be hard, but Minho and I are in love. We'd appreciate your discretion and cooperation. We'd like to move forward quickly. Thank you for understanding." The audacity. Something shifted in Sarah then. Something cold and clear and sharp. She picked up her keys, grabbed her father's jacket, and drove to First National Bank. It was time to find out what her father meant about never being powerless. The bank was old, imposing, all marble floors and cathedral ceilings. Sarah walked to the information desk, her pregnant belly leading the way. "I need to access safety. Deposit box 1247. The woman's fingers flew over her keyboard. Then she paused, looked up at Sarah with new eyes. "1 moment, please. I need to get the manager." A man in an expensive suit appeared within minutes. "Miss Bennett, I'm Gerald Whitmore, branch manager. Please follow me." He led her to a private room, used 2 keys to open the box, then quietly excused himself. Inside was a single large envelope. Sarah's hands shook as she opened it. The first thing she saw was a letter in her father's handwriting. Beneath it were documents, stock certificates, property deeds, bank statements with numbers that didn't make sense. She read the letter first. "My dearest Sarah, if you're reading this, I'm gone. You're probably confused, maybe scared, definitely grieving. I'm so sorry I'm not there to explain this in person. But baby girl, it's time you knew the truth about the Hartwell family, about me, about everything I've been protecting you from and protecting for you. I was born James Hartwell III, heir to a $3 billion empire. I walked away at 23 to marry your mother. The woman my family said wasn't good enough. I changed my name, took a janitor job, built a real life based on love instead of money. But I never gave up the inheritance. I just hid it, managed it quietly through lawyers, let it grow, protected it, for you. 3 weeks before I died, knowing what Minho would do, I restructured everything. Put it all in an irrevocable trust that he can never touch, not even if you were still married. Current estate value, $5.2 billion. I know what Minho is going to do, baby girl. I've seen it in his eyes for months. He's going to leave you. He's going to hurt you. But I need you to understand something. Him leaving is the greatest gift he could give you, because now you'll know. You'll know that when he chose to go, he had no idea what he was walking away from. He left you because he thought you were poor, because he thought you were weak, because he thought he could do better. And Sarah, my darling daughter, I need you to let him go. Let him marry his mistress. Let him build his little life. And when you're ready, when you've healed, you show him and her, and the whole world exactly who Sarah Bennett Hartwell really is. Not with cruelty, not with revenge, but by building a life so beautiful, so meaningful, so powerful that they spend the rest of their days choking on regret. That's the Hartwell way. We don't destroy our enemies. We simply become so magnificent they destroy themselves. Trust the plan, baby girl. I love you more than all the billions in the world. Daddy. Sarah sat in that room for 2 hours, reading every document, every letter, every piece of her father's secret life. Then she pulled out her phone and called the law firm whose card was attached. Hartwell and Associates. A man answered immediately. Miss Bennett, we've been expecting your call. I'm Harold Ashford, your father's attorney, and your cousin, actually. Your father was my Uncle James. My cousin. I'd very much like to meet with you to explain everything and begin the transition of assets. Would tomorrow work? Tomorrow? Sarah's voice was hollow. My husband just asked me for a divorce this morning. I know, Harold's voice was gentle. Your father predicted that would happen. He had me prepare something special for that exact scenario. Sarah, I'm so sorry for your loss. Uncle James was the best man I ever knew, but I promise you he's still protecting you. Everything is in place. Sarah ended the call and sat in silence, her hand on her belly, her mind reeling. Minho had asked for a divorce because he thought she had nothing, because he thought Jaiwan, with her 6-figure salary and designer clothes, was a better bet. He had no idea he'd just walked away from $5 billion. Tomorrow, Sarah was going to start learning exactly what that meant. But first, she had to sign those divorce papers. She had to let him go. Not because she was weak, but because her father had taught her something Minho would never understand. True power doesn't announce itself. It waits. It watches. It moves when the time is right. Sarah drove home and signed every page Minho had left her. She placed them in an envelope addressed to his lawyer. Then she opened her laptop and bought a ticket to New York for the next morning. Harold Ashford had offered to send a private jet, but Sarah declined. She wasn't ready for that world yet. She needed one more day of being regular Sarah, one more day before everything changed. Her phone buzzed. Minho, did you sign? She typed back, yes, you're free. His response came immediately. Thank you for being reasonable. For what it's worth, I hope you find happiness. Sarah stared at those words, the casual cruelty, the assumption that he was doing her a favor. She deleted the text without responding. Then she opened Instagram and looked at Jaiwan's profile one more time. The latest post showed her and Minho at a jewelry store. The caption, when you know, engaged, new beginnings. They'd gotten engaged, the same day he'd asked for a divorce, probably the same day Sarah had buried her father. Sarah felt something shift inside her, not anger, not even hurt anymore. Something colder, something patient. Something her father had spent her whole life teaching her. even though she hadn't known what the lessons were for. Dignity in the face of cruelty, grace under pressure, the long game. She commented on the post, "Congratulations, I wish you both all the happiness you deserve." Every word meant exactly what it said. Within an hour, the post exploded. People who knew Sarah, who knew she'd just lost her father and her husband in the same week, were commenting in outrage. Jaiwon's comment section became a war zone. Sarah turned off her phone and went to bed in her father's apartment, wrapped in his jacket, her hand on her belly. "Your grandpa was a smart man," she whispered. "He knew exactly what he was doing." Outside, thunder rumbled. A storm was coming, but Sarah Bennett Hartwell was ready for it. The law offices of Hartwell and Associates occupied the entire 47th floor of the Sterling Tower in Manhattan. When Sarah stepped out of the elevator the next morning, everything was glass and chrome and the kind of quiet that money buys. The receptionist looked up. Her expression shifted immediately. "Miss Hartwell." "Bennett," Sarah corrected automatically. She was led down a hallway lined with portraits of stern-looking men in suits, Hartwells, her ancestors. Then she saw it at the end of the hall, a portrait of a young man with kind eyes and a smile that wanted to break free. Her father, young, wealthy, before he'd walked away from all of this. A distinguished man in his 60s stepped out, his face breaking into a warm smile. "Sarah, I'm Harold Ashford, your cousin." He led her into a conference room where two other people waited. "This is Patricia Whitmore, your financial advisor, and David Chen, your accountant. They've been managing your father's holdings for 15 years. Now they work for you." Over the next 3 hours, they walked Sarah through everything. She owned controlling shares in 17 major corporations, commercial real estate in 12 states, a stock portfolio worth $1.8 billion, an art collection valued at $400 million, liquid assets totaling $600 million. "Your father restructured everything 3 weeks before he died," Harold said quietly, "the day after Minho visited him in the hospital." Sarah's breath caught. "Minho visited him. He told me he couldn't get away from work." Harold's expression darkened. "He spent 15 minutes complaining about hospital bills, how the pregnancy was bad timing, how he was under pressure at work. He asked if your father had life insurance to offset the burden." "He said that." Your father heard every word. "The next day, he called me and made absolutely certain Minho could never touch a penny of it." Sarah felt tears sliding down her face. "He knew." Harold slid a final letter across the table. "Minho didn't leave because you weren't enough. He left because he wasn't enough. Now rise, not for revenge, but because you are a Hartwell. Build something beautiful, help people. And when Minho sees what you've become, smile, because his regret is not your burden. Live well. That's the best revenge of all." Sarah wiped her eyes. "I want to help women in crisis, single mothers, women who feel powerless and alone. I want to start immediately." Patricia smiled gently. "Your father already established a foundation with a $500 million endowment. It's ready whenever you are." "Then I'm ready. But first, I want to host a dinner for potential partners and board members." Sarah pulled up Jaiwon's LinkedIn. She's a senior marketing director, successful, well-connected, exactly the kind of person a new foundation would want to meet, wouldn't she? Harold's smile turned knowing, along with her new husband, of course. 3 weeks later, elegant invitations arrived at 50 carefully selected addresses. The Bennett Hartwell Foundation cordially invites you to an intimate dinner reception. Friday, October 15th, 7 p.m., the Metropolitan Club. Jaiwon showed it to Minho immediately, her eyes bright. "This could be huge for my career, if I could get on their board." She RSVP'd yes within the hour. The Metropolitan Club was old money elegance, soaring ceilings, crystal chandeliers, power whispered instead of shouted. Sarah arrived early in an emerald green maternity gown. Diamond earrings that had belonged to her Hartwell grandmother sparkled at her ears. She was 7 months pregnant now, and she'd never felt more powerful. At 7:15, Minho and Jaiwon walked in. Sarah saw them before they saw her. Minho uncomfortable among genuine wealth. Jaiwon confident in her red designer dress, scanning the room for important people to impress. Harold stepped to the front. "Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to introduce our founder and director, Ms. Sarah Bennett Hartwell." Sarah stepped forward. Every eye in the room turned to her, including Minho's, including Jaiwon's. She watched the recognition hit them, watched Minho's face drain of color, watched Jaiwon's smile freeze and crack. "Thank you all for coming," Sarah said, her voice steady. "3 months ago, I lost my father, a janitor at an elementary school who taught me that true wealth isn't measured in bank accounts, but in lives you touch and integrity you carry. What I didn't know was that my father, James Hartwell III, had walked away from his family's fortune 35 years ago to marry the woman he loved. He chose love over money. He raised me to value the same things." Minho gripped the back of a chair, his knuckles white. "When he passed, he left me his entire estate, valued at approximately $5.2 billion. But more than that, he left me a mission: to help women who feel powerless and abandoned. Because 3 months ago, I was one of those women." Sarah's eyes found Minho directly. "I was 6 months pregnant, grieving my father's death when my husband asked me for a divorce. He told me I would never be enough, that he'd found someone better, someone successful, ambitious, going places." Jaiwon was shaking, her hand over her mouth. "He divorced me thinking I had nothing, and I let him go, because my father taught me you can't lose what's truly yours, and you can't keep what was never meant to stay. This foundation is for every woman who's been underestimated, told she's not enough, because sometimes the people who leave you do you the greatest favor of your life." She raised her glass, "To new beginnings, to understanding your worth." The room erupted in applause. People rushed to congratulate her. In the back, Minho and Jaiwon stood frozen, watching the woman they'd pitied become the center of a world they'd never touch. Minho grabbed Jaiwon's arm and pulled her toward the exit. They made it to the parking garage before Jaiwon's composure shattered. The scream echoed off concrete walls, raw, full of horror. "Oh my God, Minho, you left a billionaire. You divorced a billionaire for me. What have we done?" "I didn't know." "You didn't know?" Jaiwon was hysterical. "Her father was a janitor. You said she was poor. You said we were trading up." "She was poor. How was I supposed to know?" "You left her while she was pregnant. You married me 24 hours after her father died, and she's worth $5 billion. What I lost." "What you lost," Jaiwon's voice broke. "You pushed me to leave her." "Because you told me she had nothing." Jaiwon looked at her wedding ring and laughed bitterly. "I thought I won, but she let you go because you were nothing, and she knew it before we did." Jaiwon pulled off her ring and threw it at him. "I can't be married to a man stupid enough to divorce a billionaire. This is over." Jaiwon, wait. But she was gone, leaving Minho alone with the echo of her screams and the weight of the biggest mistake of his life. Upstairs, Sarah was accepting promises of support, feeling her baby kick strong and healthy. Harold approached with a knowing smile. They left rather quickly. Jaiwon was screaming in the parking garage. Sarah felt nothing, no satisfaction, no triumph, just calm certainty. "My father once told me the best revenge is building a life, so beautiful your enemies destroy themselves watching it. He'd be very proud of you." "I know, I can feel it." 2 months later, Sarah gave birth to Naomi James Bennett Hartwell. Minho was allowed supervised visits. Sarah believed her daughter deserved to know her father, even if he'd proven unworthy of being in Sarah's life. Jaiwon moved to Boston to escape the scandal, Bankruptcy. A lower-paying job where no one knew about the parking garage screaming. And Sarah built her foundation into something transformative. 200 women helped in the first year, rent paid, daycare funded, hope restored. 5 years later, Naomi started kindergarten at the same school where her grandfather had worked as a janitor. Minho showed up to drop her off, watching his confident daughter skip into the building. "She's amazing," he said quietly. "Yes," Sarah agreed, "she is." He wanted to say he'd changed, that he understood now, that he'd give anything for a second chance. But Sarah's eyes were on her daughter, and he realized she wasn't thinking about him at all. She'd won, not by destroying him, but by building a life so full, so meaningful, that his presence or absence made no difference. Sarah stood in the morning sunlight, her father's words echoing. "You are never alone. You are never poor. You are never powerless." And she knew he'd been right, not because of the billions, but because he'd raised her to know that true power comes from within. True wealth is measured in love, and the people who leave you are making room for the life you were always meant to live. So if you've ever felt abandoned, betrayed, or told you weren't enough, remember Sarah's story. Sometimes the people who walk away are doing you the biggest favor of your life. Now tell me your story. Where are you watching this from? Have you ever lost someone who protected you even after they were gone? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Your story matters. Your strength matters. And if this story reminded you that you're stronger than you know, that your worth isn't determined by who stays or leaves, subscribe and turn on notifications. Because you deserve to remember that you are never powerless. You just might not know it yet. Thanks for being here. Remember, the best revenge is living well.